The U.S.-China Trade War, which started in early April, remains unresolved, with no clear communication channel between Washington and Beijing. Despite efforts from both sides, substantial diplomatic contact has been non-existent. So, why is this ongoing deadlock persisting? On April 10, President Donald Trump expressed his willingness to meet with Chinese President Xi Jinping, calling him a friend. However, U.S. officials say they've repeatedly asked Chinese diplomats if Xi would be open to such talks, only to receive a firm no. In a recent article, Politico highlighted the situation, noting Trump's insistence on direct one-on-one talks with Xi while refusing to send a special envoy. The position of U.S. ambassador to Beijing also remains unfilled, contributing to the absence of meaningful diplomatic engagement between the two nations. However, Apollo Network commentator Wang Durhan pointed out that the issue isn't Trump's reluctance to negotiate, but rather Xi Jinping's fear of engaging in talks. The Political article is actually shifting the blame to Beijing, distorting Trump's principled stance of insisting on equal negotiations and rejecting secretive compromises into a negotiation barrier, thus misleading international public opinion. Once Xi Jinping sits down at the negotiating table with Trump, failing to make concessions would lead to the collapse of the talks, while conceding would damage his wolf warrior image, which he fears the most. This is why Beijing prefers to engage through a trusted envoy to avoid the risks. On April 22nd, Trump commented on the trade war and negotiations, stating that the U.S. and China must reach an agreement. If Beijing does not agree, the U.S. will set the terms itself. If an agreement is reached, U.S. tariffs on China will be significantly reduced, though not eliminated entirely. That same day, White House spokesperson Carolyn Leavitt also announced Trump's latest response. The president said that talks with Beijing were doing fine. The president and the administration are setting the stage for a deal with China. When asked if Trump would speak directly with CCP leader Xi Jinping, the White House spokesperson responded that there was no information to share at this time. On April 22nd, U.S. stock markets surged due to hopes that the trade war might ease, with the Dow Jones Industrial Average climbing over 1,000 points, ending a 4-day losing streak. During Trump's first term, Beijing had multiple high-level communication channels, one of the most notable being the communication between former ambassador Cui Tiankai and Trump's son-in-law, Jared Kushner. A Chinese official familiar with U.S.-China relations stated that such channels no longer exist, adding that China is uncertain who represents Trump in discussions about bilateral relations. Beijing had hoped to make breakthroughs through Trump's friend, Elon Musk. Reuters reported that a U.S. scholar who recently visited China for informal exchanges said that China's ambassador to the U.S., Xie Feng, attempted to contact Musk before the election, but was unsuccessful. China has historically used informal channels to communicate with U.S. policymakers. Several U.S. media outlets also reported that before Trump's return to the White House in 2025, Chinese officials had repeatedly attempted to contact Trump's core circle, but failed every time. Trump administration officials stated that the U.S. has made clear to China that we want working-level contact to continue, but will not engage for the sake of engagement and in dialogues that do not advance American interests. In February of this year, Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi, during a visit to New York for a UN meeting, attempted to meet with U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio, who was under Chinese sanctions, but the meeting did not happen. Aside from a chilly phone conversation at the end of January, no high-level diplomatic exchanges between the two sides have been publicly disclosed. According to sources, Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi was also unable to meet with National Security Advisor Mike Waltz during his visit. Wang had previously held several meetings with Waltz's predecessor, Jake Sullivan, including a rare prisoner exchange. The White House believes that China should send a senior trade official to replace Wang Yi for discussions on business matters, according to sources familiar with the matter. U.S. Secretary of Commerce Howard Lutnick stated that he would not engage with China as Trump prefers to negotiate directly with Xi Jinping. International relations expert Zhao Minghao at Fudan University in Shanghai stated that such outreach does not work within China's policy-making system. He said, "For China, the usual procedure is that both sides reach agreements at the working level and then arrange for a summit." The Wall Street Journal reported that Trump and his team were uninterested in official communication channels, believing that these were a way for Chinese leaders to drag the U.S. into endless talks. As a result, by the end of Trump's first term, such communication channels had almost disappeared. Since the trade war started earlier this month, the White House has stated that 18 countries have proposed tariff agreement proposals, hoping to reach an agreement. The U.S. trade team will meet with 34 countries this week. Only China has publicly opposed this. If Trump demands talks with Xi Jinping but still lacks communication channels, aside from Xi Jinping's fear of damaging his wolf warrior image, there are likely other reasons. A legal scholar in Australia with sources inside the CCP, Yuan Hongbing, recently told media that the CCP fears that if it retreats in the trade war, the U.S. will further raise the issue of holding China accountable for the coronavirus. A ruling by Missouri State Court has reportedly been a huge provocation for Xi Jinping. The U.S. may soon accuse Xi of crimes against humanity for spreading the virus, so the CCP is determined to see this through in a trade war. Under the pressure of the trade war, not only is China's industrial sector in despair, but there's also widespread hopelessness within the CCP's bureaucratic system. According to sources inside the CCP, officials, including retired ones, are concerned that if the U.S. China trade war escalates into a military conflict, their assets in the U.S., Japan, and Europe could be seized by the U.S. So these high-ranking officials are fearful, their minds are unsettled, and there is widespread dissatisfaction and even anger towards Xi Jinping. On March 10th, a federal judge in Missouri ruled that China must pay over $24 billion in damages for concealing the outbreak of COVID-19 and monopolizing protective equipment. A new section appeared on the White House website on April 18 with the headline, "Lab Leak, the True Origin of COVID-19. Between the words lab and leak was a full-body photo of Trump. This marks the first time in 5 years since the pandemic began that the White House has officially stated the U.S. government's position on the origins of the virus. It is also the first time any government has made such a declaration, making it a significant development. Commentator Hung He in Hung He News Analysis highlighted that the White House's key point is that COVID-19 very likely originated from a laboratory accident at the Wuhan Institute of Virology, linked to gain-of-function research conducted there. In the context of the ongoing trade war, the U.S. government's sudden stance on the origin of the pandemic serves at least two purposes. The trade war is only one manifestation of the broader U.S.-China confrontation. By publicly asserting its position on the pandemic's origins, the U.S. strengthens its legitimacy in this confrontation and reaffirms its unshakable leadership in global affairs. In other words, China has no solid position on the pandemic issue and no room to retreat on the tariff issue. With no options left, the country can only delay. For a major power like China, it is unusual for the leader to be unable to decide whether to meet with another country's leader. Recent reports have suggested that Xi Jinping may be facing challenges to his power, raising questions about his ability to approve a meeting with the U.S. president. After the third plenary session in mid-July 2024, China's political situation underwent a dramatic change. There were persistent rumors about Xi Jinping being seriously ill and facing a coup. Signs of Xi losing control over the military also surfaced. Reports indicated that Xi's abdication was imminent, with Vice Chairman of the Central Military Commission, Zhang Youxia, reportedly in effective control of the military. One recent example of Xi losing military control occurred when Zhang Youxia met with Indonesia's defense minister on Xi's behalf. On April 21st, Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi and Defense Minister Dong Jun co-hosted the first 2+2 dialogue mechanism meeting with Indonesia's foreign and defense ministers. The next day, Zhang Youxia met alone with the visiting Indonesian defense minister. Military analyst Sen Zhou believes that deep military cooperation between China and Indonesia requires decisions from both countries' military leaders. Dong Jun, who is not a member of the military commission, is only a nominal defense minister and lacks decision-making authority. According to past practice, Xi Jinping would have personally made the decision, but Zhang's direct engagement with Indonesia's defense minister suggests that Zhang can make decisions on behalf of the military commission. Sen Zhou also pointed out that Political Department Director Miao Hua is under investigation, and another vice chairman of the military commission, He Weidong, has been confirmed to be in trouble. It seems that Zhang Youxia now controls the military, and Xi Jinping has likely lost control over the military. This news seems to deliberately highlight the shift in military power within the CCP, signaling it both domestically and internationally. Among the U.S. and its allies, foreign and defense ministers can negotiate together on foreign affairs, but China does not have a similar system. Zhang's solo appearance signals that military matters are decided solely by him, both domestically and internationally. The Chinese foreign minister was not involved, further confirming that Xi Jinping seems unable to coordinate between the two departments, solidifying the notion that his power is waning. On top of that, when Zhang Youxia visited Vietnam in 2024, the country rolled out an exceptionally high-level reception. Vietnamese state media reported that Zhang's meeting with senior Communist Party officials did not mention Xi Jinping. Political analysts suggest that Zhang's visit to Vietnam subtly hinted that Xi Jinping's power in the military had been overtaken by Zhang. This shift not only indicates that Xi's military power has diminished, but may also reflect that the Chinese leadership is gradually signaling changes in Xi's status following significant shifts in his power. This month, when Xi Jinping visited Vietnam, there were several anomalies in the related reports by CCTV. Commentator Mei-Ling Xuan wrote that, compared to his visit in December 2023, the first anomaly was that the total reporting time decreased by 30 seconds, while the footage of Vietnamese officials increased. A few anomalies were noted in the coverage of Xi Jinping's recent visit to Vietnam. The first was a slight reduction in the duration of Xi's personal shots, particularly his solo wave, which sparked speculation about a weakening in his position. Another unusual detail was the absence of Vietnamese military officials in the welcoming crowd. Compared to 2023, fewer representatives from the Vietnamese military appeared in the footage. This absence raises questions about Xi's loss of control over the military and whether Vietnam has long been aware of this shift. A signal of Xi Jinping's waning power can be seen in a recent post shared by Ho Ching, the wife of Singapore's former Prime Minister Lee Hsien Loong, on Facebook. On April 18th, Michael Petraeus, founder of the Singapore-based platform Critical Spectator, published an article. Ho Ching shared this article, which criticized Xi for his gang boss style of leadership over the past 12 years. The article highlighted Xi's recent charm offense in Southeast Asia, begging for cooperation from neighboring countries he had long exploited, which it described as laughable and revealing of China's dire situation. Ho Ching is a Singaporean of Chinese descent. She married Lee Hsien Loong in 1985. She has long served as a member of the Tsinghua University's School of Economics and Management Advisory Board, a position connected to former Chinese Premier Zhu Rongji. By the end of 2024, Wang Qishan, a former Politburo Standing Committee member, will replace Zhu as an honorary chairman of the advisory board. Political commentator Li Yanming noted that Zhu Rongji and Wang Qishan had close ties with Lee Kuan Yew and his son Lee Hsien Loong. Ho Ching's rare act of sharing a critical article about Xi is politically sensitive, sparking speculation that it may be linked to the anti-Xi faction within the CCP. Analyst Kai Shen-kun questioned whether Ho Ching had inside knowledge of CCP developments, possibly predicting Xi's responsibility for diplomatic failures. Commentator Tang Jinyuan suggested that Singapore may have concluded that Xi is unable to retaliate, and thus there is no concern about potential consequences. Another analysis on an X account suggested that Ho Ching's post could be signaling a shift. Singapore has long been a stronghold of the anti-Xi faction within China. The U.S. trade war has pressured China, leading to internal disarray, and the anti-Xi faction may soon take action against Xi, causing a swift change in the situation. As Xi faces setbacks in the international stage, the actions of Chinese Premier Li Chang and Politburo Standing Committee member Cai Qi have also drawn attention. According to Xinhua News, on April 17, Premier Li Cheng organized a special study session stating that government officials must take immediate and proactive policy measures to boost market confidence. Li emphasized the need to act quickly at key moments, making early interventions to positively influence expectations. He also called for breaking conventional policies when necessary and utilized different measures to ensure the market feels the impact. Commentator Qing Peng observed that Li's approach of seeking solutions from lower-level officials contrasts sharply with Xi's focus on enforcing strict adherence to central directives. This is seen as a sign of defiance against Xi, implying that Xi's policies have pushed China's economy to the brink of collapse. In these critical moments, the central government seems unable to act, leaving officials to resolve the situation on their own. Meanwhile, Tsai Chi played a key role in turning Xi Jinping's Southeast Asia trip into a subject of ridicule. During Xi's visit to Malaysia on April 16, state television aired footage of Xi reading from a small notebook while meeting the king. This sparked outrage online, with many questioning whether CCTV intentionally sought to humiliate Xi. Upon further inspection, this could be seen as a calculated move, given that Tsai Chi oversees propaganda. It seems unlikely that the sensitive CCTV network was unaware that the airing of such footage would damage Xi's image. The sight of a leader reading from a notebook during a basic greeting raises doubts about whether Xi is just a puppet. Both domestic and international developments are sending a strong signal. Xi Jinping is losing power. In such a situation, Xi may be even less able to decide on a meeting with Trump. When domestic issues are burning, foreign matters become secondary. It is no surprise that Trump administration officials have stated that Xi's answer about speaking with Trump has always been a no. If communication channels remain non-existent, the U.S.-China trade war may continue indefinitely.